Hello and welcome to GreenBytes Wednesdays. GreenBytes Wednesdays is a podcast series where we facilitate critical conversations and steer consciousness when it comes to understanding the impact of our digital footprint across Nigeria's technology ecosystem. We hope that with this advanced knowledge, we can introduce you to some tools, trends, and best practices that can enhance your knowledge about digital sustainability. Are you curious about climate change? Are you a tech enthusiast or a climate entrepreneur? Come on board and learn on this episode as we get on with every conversation of the GreenBytes Wednesday podcast series. This podcast is proudly brought to you by Area I under the Scale Initiative, funded by the UK government through the Digital Access Program. My name is Seyifunmi Adebote, and I am glad to be your host. Welcome on board.
Hello and welcome to GreenBytes Wednesday. This is a podcast series where we facilitate critical conversations, and we hope that these conversations can stir within you some reflective consciousness when it comes to understanding the impact of your digital footprints, opening you up to Nigeria's technological landscape, and also helping you to gain advanced knowledge when it comes to trends, tools in the digital sustainability space. My name is Seyifunmi Adebote, and it's a pleasure to be your host on this podcast. GreenBytes Wednesday is a part of the Scale for Net Zero program, and Scale is Smart Climate Awareness, Learning, and Empowerment program, which is supported by the UK government in Nigeria. You can find this podcast everywhere you listen to podcasts, from YouTube to SoundCloud to Apple Podcasts to Spotify. You definitely can learn from the series of episodes that we have out there, opening you up to new knowledge when it comes to the digital sustainability space in Nigeria. Across the world, billions of phones, laptops, television sets, and other gadgets are piling up on landfills. And some are being shipped to other parts of the world, mostly developing countries like Nigeria, sadly. And this is adding to the huge problem of waste. Waste management in itself is really a big challenge in Nigeria. Talk about the infrastructure, talk about the personnel. And to add to that is the e-waste sector. Lots and lots of e-waste. According to the Global E-Waste Monitor, a report was released in 2020 that shows how e-waste crisis was really alarming. Over 53,000 million metric tons of e-waste was generated within a year, and we see how some of these are being shipped on 40 truck food containers and moving across the world. This is a problem, no doubt, but beyond it being a problem, what are the solutions to tackling the ballooning e-waste crisis that we see in Nigeria, particularly through the lens of policies? How can policies improve the problems of, or how can we approach the problems of e-waste from a policy solution point of view? That will be the focus of today's conversation on GreenBytes Wednesday. And guess who my guest is? Ibukun Faluyi. She's been on the podcast before, where she shared great insights. If you missed that, feel free to check it out. She is a sustainability specialist with emphasis on environmental and resource management. She has over 20 years work experience across the social and private sector, where she has helped diverse organizations to enhance their competitive advantage through improved environmental performance. Over the last 5 years, Ibukun has served as the executive secretary of E-Waste Producers Responsibility Organization, EPRON, which is the leading organization that has been championing e-waste management in and across Nigeria. Ibukun also is a member of the Solving E-Waste Problem and a member of the International Association of Impact Assessment. She has a BSc in microbiology from OAU, Ile-Ife, and 2 masters, the first in integrated environmental management and sustainability from the University of Bath, and the second in chemical risk management from the University of Cape Town. It is such a pleasure to have you again on the podcast. Thanks for the insights you shared during the last podcast, and we're very excited to listen to you again, to learn from you. Welcome, Ibukun. Welcome to GreenBytes Wednesdays.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here once again.
Absolutely. Thanks indeed. In this episode, we'll explore some regulations, incentive, collaborative initiatives that I imagine across the country, and how these are really helping to approach sustainable or sustainability in the e-waste sector, from design to collection to recycling to how it moves around. These are what we hope that today's conversation will focus on. And when we talk about e-waste in places like Nigeria, one of the things people think about is, recycling. But before, these things come into the country, can we, with stronger policies, see that we reduce how much e-waste make their way into the country? We also talk about the workers in the informal sectors. They are pretty much the ones leading. We call some babambola, away from manholes and, street lights. They also deal in other forms of you're laughing. Yeah, it's pretty pathetic to see that they have sort of shifted attention to this. But most of these babambolas, waste pickers in the informal sector are also very, if you want, call them stakeholders when it comes to e-waste management in Nigeria. We also will look a little bit around the chemical, impacts. What's the chemical, the chemical components, chemical risk of e-waste management, especially when they are poorly managed in Nigeria. Ibukun, let's start. Let's start by a little bit of global. What are some of the global actions that you've seen when it comes to e-waste management? I say this because we know that in Nigeria we're, taking baby steps, but from a, international perspective, on the global outlook, what does it look like in managing e-waste?
So, on the global outlook, and that's the very first part where all of this is coming from. There are international treaties, conventions, regulations that manage electronic waste. That's provides guidance on how e-waste should be managed. One of it is the Basel Convention, which is supposed to control transboundary movement of hazardous waste. And electronic waste is one of them. It's a very critical one. We have also the issues, the Stockholm Convention that also talks about POPs, which is critical on persistent organic pollutants, which are some of the hazardous components of e-waste as well. We could also digress a bit, also talking about the Montreal Protocol, which handles some parts in terms of maybe refrigerants and what have you. So there are quite a number of all these multilateral instruments that have been designed at the global level to manage e-waste across countries and not just in Nigeria. Moving further down to the African continent, we have the Bamako Convention as well, which is also specifically for ensuring that there's no transboundary movement of e-waste within African countries. So there are quite those tools there that it's being used. And then we also have the at different country levels, lots of their local or national regulations, legislative framework. In EU, we have the WE directive. We have quite a number at different country levels. And then we have the extended producer responsibility as a tool also that a lot of countries use to manage e-waste in their country.
Interesting. Thank you so much, Ibukun. And as you mentioned this, I was just reflecting. I've been in and out of this, United Nations Conference of Parties, COP, for nearly maybe more than half a decade now. And I have never seen e-waste at the forefront of this conversation. So is it that e-waste has, another... Let me break it down. When you talk about climate change, yes, you're talking about, the UNFCCC, and then you're talking about the COP meetings. When you talk about biodiversity, you're talking about the CBDs. But is there like an international platform, maybe through the UN, maybe otherwise, that sort of drives the conversation when it comes to e-waste management and policies also?
Yeah, absolutely. There's something we call the BRS COP, which you probably have not attended. It's also going to come up this year. Is Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Conference of Parties. I think it's around April, May this year. It's dedicated for, I'd mentioned Basel Convention, I'd mentioned Stockholm Convention. The Rotterdam Convention is also the one for the prior informed consent. So the conventions are put together to manage issues around chemicals. Then I'm sure you also have heard of SICHEM.
Yep.
So those are the agreements or tools at the international level that have been developed to manage electronic waste and similar products.
Great. Great. Thank you. So sort of building up on this, international tools that are available, we also know that there are, incentives, economic incentives. We have something called the eco-modulation fee. We also have conversations around carbon pricing coming into conversations of e-waste management. Could you make this connection, between carbon pricing and e-waste? Could you share a little bit of insight when it comes to the eco-modulation fees and other economic incentives that you probably know of as drivers in sustainable electronic design and waste management?
So those are very good tools you've mentioned, and all of them are like similar to what the EPR is trying to achieve. Carbon pricing, for instance, it allows companies to internalize all the carbon footprints of their process from the point of even extraction of raw materials to the end of life disposal. So it looks at the entire value chain, and then they're able to internalize what the carbon footprint is. What are the emissions generated across the entire value chain? And so what is the energy consumption efficiency of the process of manufacturing this product, and also the product itself during use. So carbon pricing helps to regulate that and ensure that producers start thinking about internalizing this, and the true cost of the products is on them generally. Then when you talk about eco-modulation of fees, is a very important tool that is used in implementing extended producer responsibility. So eco-modulation of fees ensures that a producers revisits the design of their products in a way that it helps them in the long run. And what do we mean by that? Once they see that they have to pay so much at end of life to manage this product, then they introduce appropriate design features for repairability, design for reuse, design for recyclability, because they know that the end products, they will be responsible for it, and it's a very good tool that helps to ensure that people that are designing for this are incentivized, and they do more. So I'm not paying for the next person who is not introducing the appropriate design features in their products. And then we've spoken also about the EPR as well, ensuring that producers take responsibility for their products across the entire life cycle. So all of these are things that are driving appropriate production of electronic devices. And I can bring it closer home. You see there's quite a lot of new features are coming up when it comes to the development of all these tools. In the past, you have lots and lots of cables in a person's house, but lately you buy your devices, they don't come with cables, because if you do need a cable, you can go ahead and get one. So producers are seeing that, okay, let's be more efficient, let's be resource efficient in our production process. And then there are other features coming up in terms of making products for rental. So products are now a service. Instead of you making lots and lots of electronic products, you can make a fridge, a very large cold room or a big freezer, and put in a community where people come and put their things and pay rental. So these are different innovative designs that are coming up in different parts of the world, with a view to ensure that we attain this net zero. We are talking in terms of carbon reduction, and then we attain resource efficiency, and not just keep producing and producing, because these resources are definitely finite. So these are very linked to the circular economy. As you are well aware, you see that we're prioritizing other more value adding what's it called, concepts, than waiting until we have to recycle. Let's reduce what we need to produce. Let's repair. Let's reuse before we now talk about recycling.
Absolutely. And very quickly, you can make it brief. Since you threw in, net zero into this response, can you make the connection of net zero and e-waste? Or how do you understand net zero, being a practitioner in the e-waste sector?
So it's very connected, and essentially in the areas of the impacts. Okay, it's very connected, especially in the areas of the impacts that comes with the management, even in the impact that comes with the production of the products. When you're mining materials to develop or produce your electronic products, it's very energy intensive. But if you prioritize using secondary materials as components of your manufacturing, then the energy that you are going to be using up and emitting greenhouse gases in the process, you have absolutely reduced it. And then even when you get the products to and that goes across the value chain of the waste hierarchy like that. But if you then get to the point where you have the products and you are recycling them, um recycling them appropriately also, it's helps us to, is a very good climate impact, because you reduce the emissions that the informal and indiscriminate practice will have to do, or taking the product into the dump sites where they release hazardous substance that have a lot of climate impact as well. There's a strong link to this thing. Even though you've said you've not seen a lot of e-waste being spoken at those climate, but when you do attend like a BRS COP, you see the link more relatedly
Great.
on that.
Great. Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. When you were responding, I took notes and I saw that not less than 3 times you mentioned the roles of producers being very deliberate in, thinking about the process, the design, the components and all that. And we can say that this is because most times these producers, especially in the western part of, or the global north, as we sometimes call them, in the developed countries, are constrict or sort of confined to work within very strict regulations. But there are other producers who feel like, well, I can move to places where the regulations or the policies are not so stringent and, do what I like. What do you think Nigeria should be thinking about to curb this, which we know clearly is the case? In what ways do you think we can see policies as effective tools to really sort of get producers to do the right thing?
Yeah, so policy is very important in achieving that. Yeah, it's absolutely important. Restriction on hazardous substances, policies is the Rose Directive. Everybody knows about it, and it's very strong in the European countries, because we've tried to adopt that as well into our own national regulations, and that is very important for us. But what is even more important is how are we doing the checking. So our standard organizations should pay particular attention to that. Or it should be part of the conformity assessment that the country is looking at internally. And then at the borders, we want to equip our customs officers with this knowledge so that they can filter the kind of products that come into the country, and then we can have what is required. And if you're also very observant, you will have noticed that there are lots of assembling plants that are coming up locally for electrical electronic equipment in Nigeria now. So we should also then take a look at those and make sure that they are abiding by these regulations that is binding in the countries where these products have originally come from, so that Nigeria does not invariably become like a getaway place for making everything go.
Yeah, someone called it a dumping ground for, e-waste across the world. Others call it like a conveyor belt, just, moving from other parts. But just before you go, I know that EPRON, where you serve as, or where you've served as the executive secretary for the last 5 years, is very research based. Are you thinking about setting up a database where people can access, facts or figures about digital waste in Nigeria?
Well, the last time we spoke, I was saying that there are quite a number of things I don't want to let out of the bag yet, but it's one of those things that are on the horizon, not just for EPLON, but even as a national, registry where people can find this information at the national level. So it's owned by the country, and then it can help to guide the policies appropriately like we want it, and everybody can have access to all this information. So those are kind of the things that are in the pipeline.
Great, great. Probably my last question to you, Ibukun. If you were in a room with policymakers, key policymakers that had the influence, they are in place of power, and if they really understood the challenges, the problems, the enormosity of e-waste, they would take action. How exactly will you sort of present the need for them to take action?
Well, for me, I think one of the things that should drive a person to take action is when you look at the impact of e-waste when it is not managed appropriately, and the amount of people it can affect, and the fact that it doesn't choose the people it affects. So it's helping these policymakers to see that this has no boundaries. It will not say, oh, because you live in Asokoro or because you live in Banana Island. Once the environment is polluted, the environment is polluted. And when resources are no longer available, resources are no longer available. So all these things is letting them see that they need to take the needed action now, because nobody knows who the next victim of these things will be. You cannot say, oh, the environment has no boundaries, so you can't choose that if they pollute in Alaba or they pollute in Ojota, it will not migrate to your area. You can't control that. So just get the right thing done so that we all feel safe and we're comfortable in our own country.
Thank you so much. Get the right thing done so we all feel safe and comfortable in our own country. I have to echo that. Just before I let you go, Ms. Faluyi, I have been doing most of the questioning. I wonder if there are any questions that you might have for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's not every day that you find people, take an interest in e-waste like this, and I'm quite encouraged that you're doing this. So my question for you is, um, how are you making this information? Because I see that it's a podcast. How are you also going to make this information available to rural people? Because I know that for the rural people, the level of knowledge they have about e-waste is really low. Do you have a particular strategy for making this available to the rural dwellers? And also, what piqued your interest in e-waste? I mean, why were you interested in choosing this topic as a subject for your podcast?
Interesting. Thank you very much, Ibukun. So I would start with the second question. Um, So this podcast generally is hinged on digital sustainability. And there is no way we talk about digital sustainability and the need to move forward in how we sort of manage the digital space without looking at e-waste. It's right there in our faces. We can see it all over the place. And that's why we thought, hey, it will be really incredible to speak to an expert that can shed, very tangible insights when it comes to e-waste management in Nigeria. So that's why we are interested. The second question about localizing it, I would say that on previous episode, we've talked about, speaking in Pidgin, we've talked about using arts and other forms of communications to make these things relatable to people at the grassroots. And we hope that we can do it, maybe not on this series, but in subsequent series or other projects that are connected to Scale program. I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure indeed. Well, yes, what an exciting chat. Thank you so much for the insights. Thanks for your time. And this is where I have to say thanks to you who has been listening to GreenBytes Wednesday. On this particular episode, we've been looking at the role of policies and policies as solution to tackling the e-waste problem, which is growing across the world, but also how it's been affecting Nigeria as a country. What can we do? We've spoken about the role of policymakers, especially, and I do hope that maybe some policymakers are listening. If they are not, perhaps you have them in your contacts. Share with them this episode. Share with them other episode of GreenBytes Wednesday, and together let us begin to take actions to see that we can become a truly digital sustainable country, like a country that advances when it comes to digital, innovations, but also keep in mind sustainability. Check out other episodes on YouTube, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, and share with us what you think. We'll be very, very honored to hear from you. Before I go, I should say thank you to the UK government that has made it possible for us to bring this and many other episodes. GreenBytes Wednesday is a part of the Scale for Net Zero program. Scale is the Smart Climate Awareness Learning and Empowerment Program. Thanks to the team, wonderful Ajibola Ayo, that has made it possible for us to bring you all of these episodes. My name is Seyifunmi Adebote. Take good care of yourself, take good care of your environment, and bye.
Thank you very much for joining us on this episode of GreenBytes Wednesday. This podcast is brought to you by Area I under the Scale Initiative, thanks to funding from the UK government through the Digital Access Program. Have you learned something new? Please share with your network, share with your friends, as I look forward to hosting you on yet another episode of GreenBytes Wednesday next week. Follow us on our social media platforms, check out our courses, test yourself, see how much you know, how much you're learning when it comes to digital and sustainability ecosystem in Nigeria. And I should remind you that as you balance your knowledge of digital ecosystem, also remember to stay committed to a shared and sustainable planet. My name is Seyifunmi Adebote. Bye for now.